Hello, everybody. Wake up, wake up. It's the first of the month. There's a new meaning besides getting paid to the first of the month, which is the rap scholars. That's me and Alfred. We are having First Fridays with rap scholars once a month. We're doing this Trap Society panel. So a little bit about the rap scholars. I don't know, some of you may listen to the podcast, others of you have not heard yet, but we have a podcast called The Rap Scholars, which basically just tries to discuss and analyze and exchange ideas about rap culture, music and culture. So, you know, we have a hour-long episode once a month where we kind of delve into topics. And we do that. One of the things that's really important, and it's behind the name Trap Society, is a focus on contemporary rap music. Because there's plenty of books about 90s rap. She gonna hate me for this one. But there's plenty of books about 90s rap. And I'm sure y'all have heard the term mumble rap. Trap music gets a lot of hate. Some of it deserved, others of it not, in my opinion. So we wanted to call it Trap Society because we wanted to make sure that we're focusing on contemporary music and kind of thinking through contemporary ideas, new ideas about what's happening now in rap, which we don't really find much of a space for here in the Valley. So we wanted to see if we could create a space where people could come and exchange ideas about rap music and culture, as well as the long cultural histories and traditions that inform it. So we came up with the panel series Trap Society, hosted by me or moderated by me and Alfred. And then we got some brilliant panelists for y'all tonight. They're gonna give you your life. So Trap Society, we've been doing the podcast now since April. And Trap Society is our first attempt at expanding into real life programming. And it's a move that's really exciting to us because the real vision behind Rap Scholars is as a cultural organization, as a research institute for rap studies. That's what we're trying to build it into. So this is an exciting moment for us, and we just want to say thank you so much for coming out. It is glorious to see you all here, and we're really, really excited to have a good conversation tonight. So thank you again for coming. Alfred is going to tell you a little bit about our panel theme for tonight.
So, hi everybody, my name is Alfred Kimani. I will be the DJ of the night. Go by DJ Noble or DJ Bamboo, audience choice on that one. So tonight's theme of segment is, how does trap music refuse white supremacy? Ooh, apologies about that. Upcoming question. The panel theme is, how is hip-hop's contribution to the progress of the Black community? I'm gonna say that one more time. How has hip-hop's contributions to the progress of the Black community?
So kind of a little short backstory on how we came to this theme for this first panel is that there's a lot of writing and research and scholarship done about rap music that pathologizes it as like violent and destructive. And sometimes it is, right? And which we can totally get into too. But we wanted to kind of push back against that pathologizing and think about how hip hop, what does hip hop do for us? You know, like, it's not because it's violent that it's become the dominant cultural force in the world for the last 40 years. So what about it? What is it doing? What do we use it for? That sort of thing. So we wanted to figure out, like, you know, what utility does it have for Black people in 2017, and why does it have so much pull? So without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panelists for tonight. First, we have Mtali Shaka Banda, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves as well, but he's a jazz musician, new album just dropped, and he's also a music teacher, and he was featured on our N-word episode from October. Next, Temar France from Smith. Tamar has her own podcast called Marginalia, Notes from the Margin. And she was the brilliant mastermind behind our Trap Church episode and also joined us for our N-word episode. So she's like fam. And last but not least, we got Olivia Ekah. Olivia is Afro-Am fam. And was also on our N-word episode. So this is like a little reunion. So I'm gonna go ahead and just let y'all introduce yourself.
What's up? I'm Mtali Shaka Banda. I think Nas did a good job saying who I am. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for what Trap Society and Rap Scholars has to do. I'm excited that everybody's out here, and I'm looking forward to this evening and building.
Hi again, I'm Temar France. Very excited to be here. I'm so excited all of you came on this Friday night. You could have been anywhere, you came here. So yeah, I'm excited.
Good evening. Oh, okay. Oh. Hello? Hello? Hello, good evening. I'm Olivia. I'm a fourth year student here at the Afro-Am department. I guess I'm the in-house young old head. Thank you, Nas. So you'll hear a lot about the old stuff from me. Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey, okay, it's lit. First, I just wanted to thank the Afro-Am department for their generous sponsorship for the space, the equipment, the food. Y'all give a round of applause to Afro-Am. Our chair is over there on duty. Yeah, and I wanted to shout out our graduate student organization, Trap somewhere over there. They're doing amazing work, and we're trying to figure out how to collaborate, so it's lit. And then again, I just really want to thank y'all for being here. Y'all don't know us yet, but we want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us, and we want to hear your ideas. So without further ado, I'm just going to give you a short breakdown about what's about to happen. So we've broken the panel down into 3 segments, all kind of thinking about different questions regarding hip-hop's contributions to the progress of the Black community. So those segments are how trap music refuses white supremacy, trap in the body and performance, and respectability and trap Blackness. And after each segment, we're gonna have questions from you all. So we were trying to find a way to integrate we're calling it call and response, but integrate the audience more into the conversation. We're not set on this route yet. We're still looking for new ways to make this really a two-way conversation. Yeah, so we'll have the Q&A, and I guess we can jump right into our first segment. Alfred is gonna talk a little bit about that and ask the first questions. Yeah, so we'll just pose a question, allow the panelists to respond, and then hear from you all. So yeah, thanks.
Cool. So the first theme is, how does trap music refuse white supremacy? Again, the theme is, how does trap music refuse white supremacy? First question is, do you feel like hip-hop music and cultural practices engender racial pride? If so, how do you see and think about that in your own life?
Who gonna be the jump off?
I can start with that one. I think about this a lot because I study performance and specifically how Black women factor into hip hop. So for me and my study, it's really important for me to think about how Black women's expressions, is that me? Of racial pleasure and just hyperbolic performances of sexuality are in many ways positioned to, I guess, create the sense of masculinity or the identity of masculinity within hip hop. It sort of cannot exist without this this gendered idea of Black women, of womanhood, even if it's just coming down to, you know, the aesthetic of Black womanhood or Black women. So that's the way I sort of filter that question, is through how the cultural practices of Black women specifically factor into like Black hip hop and the visuality of it.
I feel like there's everything you just said, for sure. I know for myself, I think there's a lot of things, at least myself as a black man that spent a lot of his childhood growing up in the South and around majority Black communities, there's a lot of things that we were told that were in hip hop pertaining to our Blackness that were undesirable. And I think, I grew up, they tell us, pull your pants up, these sort of things, these things about hip hop, the violence, the sexualization, all those things are very real. But also just how we present ourselves, how we dress, how we talk, which I think are very real things to our culture, but we were supposed to somehow reject those in order to fit into mainstream culture. And I think hip hop has done an amazing thing for all of us in here who are Black in terms of letting us feel valued and letting us know that who we are and how we talk and how we dress can still be, is valued and is desirable, and it gives us that sense of pride through listening to hip hop. If it's not necessarily always directly stating that, it's doing that.
I was wondering if either of you, or also Olivia, I think I've definitely grown up in environments. I mean, I think the United States is one huge environment in which hip-hop Blackness, the way that Black young people who engage in hip-hop culture perform their Blackness or our Blackness, that is right, undesirable, or criminal even. And so I was wondering, like, if maybe any of you had experiences that come to mind where you kind of used trap music in a moment, even if it's in your own head or in your own body, as a way to kind of like push back against that demonization.
I think I brought this up during the N-word roundtable, but trap music specifically for me is really important to how I move around space and how I feel safe in white spaces. So I associate like I could even call it now like reemergence of like my love for hip hop with coming here into the Valley and needing some outlet that connected me to my Blackness in a way that felt authentic to me. Obviously, I'm visualized and seen very differently, from an outsider, but there's something about being able to utilize trap and being able to utilize the way it influences my gestures and it influences my attitude and my style. There's something about being able to perform that and for it to feel so exclusive to me, or for it to feel so powerful and transformational, that I think that's sort of where I locate it in terms of how I sort of put it to use in an embodied way. It's very much like an armor for me to be listening to trap music and then moving through space or walking through UMass's campus. And in a way, it's a protective way to move. So that's how I feel about it.
So I was hesitant to respond because I like trap music. There's a lot of it I like, but there's a lot of it I don't understand. And because of that, I'm hesitant to make big claims about stuff. And on top of that, I'm a historian, and we also believe we can't touch things for 20 years. So I'm also really hesitant to talk about that until some time passes. But just thinking about trap music in itself, there's a lot of it that sometimes is undecipherable. It's hard to understand. And just thinking about Black music, the history of Black music, that just kind of falls in line with the Black music tradition. There's, among the youth specifically, there's since the blues, through rhythm and blues, to funk music, there's always been something within those popular Black music genres that sometimes is undecipherable specifically to white society at some point. So just thinking about trap music, like, Young Thug, Lil Uzi Vert, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, but the emotion sometimes emits. Yeah, just.
You know, it's interesting that you say that too, because for me, I think the songs that I am drawn most closely to, or strongest to, are often the ones where I can't make out a single word. You know, like there's plenty of Gucci Mane verses that you can understand 100%, but then there's also, you know, songs that you're like you said, it's a feeling.
Right.
And for me, like one of the ways, probably the most common way I resist white supremacy in my daily life is, like you were saying, is through enjoying that that illegibility, right? The fact that you don't know what to make of me. And to speak to Tamar's point, I feel like, especially in white spaces, when I'm listening, I'm like always have my headphones on. There's never a quiet moment. But what that does for me is that it creates like a materiality, like a sonic field around me. So when that white person like doesn't notice how much space they're taking up and like slams their body into mine, or, you know, one of the many manifestations of just like space issues, it makes me feel big. And so even when I don't understand the words, like then I can take the sounds to mean anything I want. So it's almost more applicable when I can understand the words, because the feeling makes me feel big. And I say this every day of my life, but I feel like one of the most important things to me about rap, and the reason why I've never left rap and lived through rap, is because it makes me feel like somebody in a world that has told me I'm nobody. And so I think personally, like, if you can make Black kids feel colossal, like they're a king, queen, goddess, god, like if you can make somebody who's been told they're nothing feel like something, like that to me is more powerful than any lyric. So anybody wanna talk before we open it up to people?
I do.
Okay.
Just one thing. Can you turn me down a little bit? I feel like y'all can feel me in your stomachs. Yo, all right, that's better. All right, I feel, you know, hip hop in general, not just trap music, but all Black music is something where you can move to it and it just feels so natural. You know, I find myself, you know, I might play a hot track, and I'm listening to them like, yo, this track's fire, and you know, 30 seconds into the track, I find myself on the other side of the room, and I don't know how I got there, but I know the music moved me. You know, Black people, we can dance, not because of anything inherently, it's because our music's just better than y'all's. You know, you can't two-step to...
Shots fired.
Can't two-step to the Ramones. Nah, like there's a sense of, whether it be with trap music, I mean, I think that's what makes trap music so brilliant, is because, you know, I think all Black music is just so fluid to dance to, but trap music, like, anyone can dance to. Like you can have no sense of rhythm, but you play some Migos and you hitting the folks on everybody.
The white guy at the basement.
No, for real though, you know. But there is a sense of trap music, of hip hop, of Black music, of, at least with myself, you know, a spiritual connection where I feel like I'm getting a sense of who I really am. And navigating spaces, it just gives you a sense of swagger and two-step and confidence to navigate this prison of Western Massachusetts. You know, and so that's sort of how I use it. I use it to move, you know, like we're all saying, and it feels good just to dance, but it also feels good just to navigate through everything that we have to navigate through, and it gives us that pride and that sense of who we are, and not to back down.
Word. Well, we want to open it up to the audience and see what thoughts y'all have about this. So if anybody has anything right off the top, let us know. Otherwise, I could keep going all night. Yeah.
I have a question, just like for the femme identifying people on the panel. How do you feel about like feeling empowered? Like, there's the argument of like a lot of misogyny is in like rap music and things like that. Like, what does it mean to, I guess, like have a balance of like feeling empowered and like also like is it like a empowered critique, or like, you know, how do you like navigate that?
Great, thank you. Anybody want to answer that?
I'll be honest. In general, just overall, I do not look for hip hop to empower me as a musical genre. I love it. I appreciate it. I understand it. But just generally to be empowered, that's not necessarily what I look for. Again, I study more soul music, so if we were talking about that, that would be more so my speed. But just thinking about it's correct, grammatically correct, female MCs. I always, when it comes to hip hop, I enjoy good flow, good bars. I'm all as Nas, 100% bars. If you don't have bars, I'm not with you.
Get out of here.
You see what I'm saying? If you're not about bars, you can have a cute production's great. Shout out to Pete Rock. But if the bars ain't with it, I ain't with it. So just thinking about that, like, you know, you got folks like MC Light, Yo-Yo, Lil Kim. They have very like bars. You know, even shout out to Remy Ma when she was battle rapping. You know, battle rap is very much her area. Billboard, maybe not. But you know, in that relation, when I come across female MCs that come with bars, like that's like yes, because that's not a masculine thing. You know, that's just good wordplay. That's being lyrical. That's being a poet. So for me, if I can find those women that can be lyrical and poetic like that, and it's like, oh, that wordplay, that took me a minute. Like, what you say? Like, those are the ones. Shout out to those sisters. Yeah.
I like gender play, right? And I love the way Lil Kim specifically introduced me to fucking with gender. So I feel like there's so much possibility in trap, especially for female MCs, but even for male MCs, you know, even through misogynist lyrics, for me, I find there's still some possibility to play with it in the way I perform it and in the way I want to use it. So in many ways, I co-opt all of their language and their attitude and their style, because I believe first and foremost a Black woman gave it to them. So for me, it's like, it's mine, you know? And the gender performance and the misogyny is reliant on me feeling oppressed by it or me believing you. So I feel like we have so many examples of women breaking through and showing that not only can we flip the script on you, but we'll make it more applicable, because we can poke fun at this very, you know, thinly, you know, created thing called masculinity. So, you know, I think it's important to always keep in mind how misogyny functions in effort, first and foremost, to make me forget how powerful I am, right? So I want to always locate where I feel like trap empowers me, and for me, it's just through taking it. It's because it's ours. It's ours. So that's where I come with it. There's definitely some lyrics and some MCs that will never have my support, because their behaviors, you know, outside of the performance, prove that they're trash, and I need not be near them and no one else. But I find it to be useful, and I'm finding that it's, I don't know if this is on, or it is on. I'm finding that it is showing me more power within my gender play and performance and presentation. That's where I'm coming at it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not femme presenting, as you all can see, but I wanted to respond because I think your question can be applicable also to queer folks.
Yeah.
And listening to rap. And actually our next episode for the Rap Scholars is on rap and the politics of listening, which kind of takes up this question of how can we be a rap fan? How am I your fan if you want to kill me? You know, like how do I navigate that? And I think one thing what Temar said really resonated with me. I think one thing is playing with it, but another thing that I do is I make music too, and I don't make music to be a musician, to be a rapper. I make music because that's just kind of like part of my way of being and processing through my life. But one thing that I've been trying to do is, the narrative that you're referring to is everywhere. We all know it. And it gets forced down our throats. So one thing that I like to do is, in my own music, I like to create characters that are speaking back to that. And even if then I'm creating characters that are also, like I had a little concept EP that was, like I called it Fuckboy Consciousness. But even within that project, I had other characters kind of speaking back to the characters that I disagreed with. So I think like creating alternatives that address the issues at hand, especially violence against other human beings, I think is definitely one way to do it. And then part of what that does too is create other kinds of representation and other priorities and other expectations for how we engage with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Anybody else got something they wanted to talk about? All right, we'll keep it moving. Y'all good, or you want to stay on this? All right, we'll keep it moving. So the next thing we want to talk about is trap and the body and performance. You want to introduce this one?
Yes, indeed. In short, I think a lot of people can definitely speak to this. Do you move your body when you listen to trap music? How does trap music feel in your body?
And if you do, how does moving your body to trap music influence how you engage your body in white spaces?
Do I move my body when I listen to trap music? Yes, and no. Sometimes it's a very just cerebral experience, but I do move my body a lot. I think I move my body more by myself because safety has to factor into how I can move in space, and I think the dances we associate with trap tend to be hypersexualized and tend to be, and the way we talk about illegibility, I think applies to that movement. I think there's an assumption that, especially for Black women, performing, twerking is an easy thing for everyone to attach to. I mean, there are many sexual connotations that come with that, that movement, but that's just the very popular, cultural understanding and imaginary around that particular movement. But I think for me, it always feels empowering to do it alone, so that I know my performance is first and foremost for me. I mean, that was me since a kid, right? We were all in our private spaces acting and performing before we went public, but I feel like it's essential for me to keep that private movement, because often when we have eyes on us, we shift and we change, but it definitely helps me feel, I think, close to my body and close to like the possibilities of my body when I'm performing alone.
Hello. Okay. Hello. I know a lot of people, when it comes to trap, there can be a lot of like big movements, but again, for the little bit of trap that I do listen to, I always appreciate the fact that I actually don't have to move my body a lot to feel connected to the music. Like, I feel like a church lady. I could just like put my hand up and like that will even suffice. Like, even if I'm just like, and nobody would even notice that I was like in the moment, and it's always those little interactions that are really empowering, because there's something going on the outside, but nobody really knows what's happening on the inside. So yeah, that's interesting. I relate it back even to like punk music and Green Day. Like when I'm walking on campus, you don't know that I'm listening to Green Day. I'm listening to Boulevard of Broken Dreams, but for all you know, it could be gospel music, it could be hip hop, it could be soul music. But in those little moments where I might be like in it. Like on holiday, I'm going in, but it's just the certain taps, you know, might hit with my finger or something. Same thing with trap music. So yeah, that's always empowering to be able to appreciate and experience music outwardly and not have anybody actually know it or realize it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know I like to dance to trap music based on questions I gave before. But I want to carry on that because I think that's real, you know. Just the idea that I feel like you can move to any music, but I think specifically trap music, there's a way you can move to it without even moving. And I feel like that's what makes it so transferable to other spaces, especially to white spaces. Even like when you're not even listening to trap music, you can be moving to trap music. I don't know, does anyone else do that? Like just think of a hot beat and you're just like, ah.
Skirt, 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 skirt.
But
Splash.
But I think that's what makes trap music and gives it a connection with people. I think that's what gives hip hop a connection with people, is this way where you can interact with it and be in your zone, but you're moving, you know. That's a spiritual experience.
I think as a DJ, there's no way I can stay quiet on this question. I can't help but definitely move my body when I listen to trap music. There's something about a certain currency and vibration that, I don't know, awakens certain feelings and emotions that I think men and masculinity tend to ignore. And I think trap music does embody one very strong emotion, and it's anger and fear. But so many men are unwilling to step out of that context to address any other emotions. So I think, I don't know, for me to be able to control that vibration and the audience to pick up on that is really interesting to see that relationship with emotions and music and, of course, vibrations.
I'm curious. So, for those of you who do move your body when you listen to trap music, what comes out of the experience of like, because you know, even like you were saying, like you could just you know what I'm saying, and that's already enough. That already does something. So I'm curious, like when you're sitting there and the beat is hot and they talking about splash. I'm sorry, that's my favorite ad-lib. Splash. But how does it feel? Like what does that do in your body? For you to just like, you know, or whatever, hit the nay or Dougie or whatever. Like what does the performance of that do? Like engaging your body when you're listening, what does that do to the experience of listening to the song?
So we've had these conversations. Trap music reminds me a lot of like your traditional like choir songs that you would sing, praise and worship songs, just because of the fact that it's set up. Every line there's an ad lib, and with that ad lib, whatever it is, that's a response. That's your space to respond to whatever the line was. So yeah, you know, you got splash. It could be that, but whatever you put in that, you know, performance-wise with your body, that's your time to actually like manifest an ad-lib, manifest a call and response with the music. So, trap music be gospel too. Yeah.
Church. Trap church.
Right.
She said it.
All right, we want to open it up again and see what y'all thinking. Yeah.
So the original question was, like, how does trap make you move? And I guess I want to ask, like, how does trap influence your movements? So, like, you know, you're driving, that certain song comes on, all of a sudden you're going a little faster than you originally thought you were, or you're walking with a little bit more attitude than you were 3 minutes ago. Like, how does that feel different to you than, like, the sudden movements? Or how do you think trap influences your movement in that way?
I feel like trap emboldens me to perform my Blackness in such excessive ways that I never knew I could find that much pleasure in doing, you know? So I think it motivates or influences me to just twerk that much harder or to, you know, to stunt that much harder, or to be even more dramatic in my movement. I think it really just, it facilitates an excess of emotion that I really appreciate, because so often, especially as Black people, we feel imprisoned, even in my own body. So it really gives me the opportunity to, name I'm Black, in a way, to myself, and to then dislocate that from white supremacy, but to just find pleasure in that, Like there's something frustrating about my study, in that there's so much information about how it's disparaging to my body or disparaging to my womanhood or my gender or whatever, when I feel very much the opposite. I feel like that is when I get to be this idea that you think, and there's so much possibility in that. There's so much possibility in me being able to perform that excessiveness, because it's powerful. I think things that are powerful tend to be demonized. So I think that's how I think of it influencing me, and I think of the way I move. Like, it makes me want to move that much harder. It makes me want to widen my stride that much, respond to the ad-libs, add my own,
I'm so happy you just said that, because the main thing that trap does for me, and why I will love it for the rest of my living days, is that it... Dang, I forgot what I was gonna say. What I wanted to say in response to you is that it allows me to be unapologetic, and it, more than that, it allows me, like, the way that Blackness has been constructed has been without the permission of Black people, right? The narratives that have been imposed onto Black bodies are violent and are not of us, right? The narratives. So for me, like, what I was thinking in response to you was that trap gives me a vehicle to name myself in public consciousness. So, like you're saying, if I'm walking down campus, like, I might pull my pants down a little lower. I might, just walk with that extra little, like, you don't want to mess with me, that extra confidence. Because, and where I think the extra confidence comes from is that I'm naming what you're already calling me, right? You're calling me a nigga. And we both know it. So I'm naming that, I'm acknowledging that, and then I'm reinterpreting what that means. So I get to name myself, even if I'm still bad, even if I might be a nigga, but I'm that nigga, And then, so it's a re-theorizing of what Blackness and badness mean, which then is so empowering on the experiential side of it. So.
I feel like there's a forward motion to, like, trap music. I think, like, different music you listen to, I feel like there's different ways, different colors, different textures, but there's something about trap music where you just feel like you need to push a little forward, and however that might mean, either literally, you walk a little faster, you got a little more pep in your step, or just forward in terms of your personality, your emotions. You get a little blacker, pull your pants a little lower, put my pick back in my hair. I'm thinking of trap. I'm thinking of this past weekend. I was down with my girlfriend and with her family in Washington, D.C. And it's all Black people, but different generations. And I think trap music speaks to a certain generation. I don't think we can't speak for all Black people when we say trap music gives us this feeling. I think it's millennials, Black millennials who feel this, because I could
definitely not Joe Budden.
I feel like closetly he's vibing out to Migos. He just don't want to admit to it. He's sipping the Kool-Aid. I think I'm sure there's people in this room who might listen to trap music and not feel the same things that we're feeling right now, just because of everyone has different experiences, everyone has different outlooks on life, and I think specifically our generation, our outlook has an affinity to trap music and what trap music does and elicits and makes us feel. And I just knew in that party, they was playing the jams at first, they was playing the R&B, there was, I'm a jazz musician, you know what I'm saying? You give me that groove, I'm gonna slide right in the pocket, so I was chilling. But as soon as they started playing the Migos, all the younger folks, that's where the party took a turn, and like folks was getting the vibe, and that's cool, you know. And you could tell just by the music. You could probably tell if there was no music playing, what music was playing, like just by looking at like the vibe of how that room just changed, and everyone just felt like much more empowered. And these are kids like 13, 14 years old, just, you know, splash. But I think, you know, trap music gives us that sense of forward motion. I'm hesitant to say aggressive in a sense that most people think, but I think it's a aggressiveness in a sense of retaliation to whiteness and retaliation to the society that tells us this is how we're supposed to be, and to be respectful, or to be respectable, and to be complacent, and to be docile, and to be, you know, good Negroes. And, you know, trap music, it takes us out of that box and makes us feel like we don't need to do that. And if we're gonna be that nigga, we're gonna be that nigga.
So for me, I'm gonna stick with that praise and worship thing, because for me, when it comes to that, I'm following the leader. So when it comes to who's ever on the track, whatever their flow is, I'm with that. I'm following your lead. Like, you getting intense, I'm getting intense. In my mind, I'm thinking about Bad and Bougie. Soon as Lil Uzi Vert comes in with the yeah, it's like, all right, we with this, we doing this. Like, I'm with you.
Look alive.
You know what I mean? I'm following you. You know, Quavo's kind of cool. It's like, all right, we keeping it cool. Keep going. What? Not Quavo. Well, yeah, him too, and Offset, whatever. All of them. Keeping it cool. But as soon as you get to that moment, it's like, nah, now we jumping. All right. Choir director says we jumping, we jumping. So I'm with you. So, yeah, because with that, when in relation to music, if it moves you in that way, I feel like that's the point. You're supposed to be on their wavelength. So if that's the point in a song where it's like, nah, you need to get up, you need to feel this is the one, that should be kind of clear, you know, if it's salient to you. Yeah.
Follow-up question to something you just said. I'm just thinking, like, for y'all or the audience as well, like, when you listen to trap music, is it different when it's in a communal space than when it's you're listening to it alone? Like, you spoke about just dancing to it by yourself. Like, yeah, how is that different? Is that something that you do with other people? And if so, like, does it look different from how you do it alone?
Not necessarily. I think I'm always like pulling from the home repertoire once it goes public, but it definitely, even though it's very much a private experience for me, it definitely filters over into the public, in that I still draw from that feeling I create, right, in that solitary play with it. So is that what you mean? Is that?
And I guess you would probably draw from the repertoire movement as well. Like, that's something also we can talk about too. Like, I feel like I watch videos of kids dancing to trap music. That's like what I do alone at home. But yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's my answer. I think it just further animates it. It just, I feel like I often have to practice that confidence, right? And so trap gives me that vehicle to do it. And it always changes, you know, in a new scene, it's always gonna change. Something else is gonna influence it, but it definitely helps me animate what I know I've been thinking about and practicing, yeah.
I think it depends on the vibe, you know, and by vibe I just mean complexion of the room, you know. I think Black people, we know what it is. Just because it's your song, this might not be the space for you to take it there for a whole lot of different reasons.
Or it might be just that space, right? You might want to be bad today.
Yeah, bucket. But there's definitely, the vibe, I think, is real. I think if I'm in a space where I feel I'm with my people, then it goes there. You know what I mean? And I think you can build on vibe that's in the room, you know, with trap. I think we've all been there, you know. People start doing things and you start taking things that you don't normally take out your repertoire list, you know, and you start
like, ooh, that's in my lexicon.
yeah. You know what I'm saying? The gold list. But yeah, I definitely think there's a communal aspect to it that it gets enhanced. However comfortable you feel with the people you're in, it's definitely communal music. I mean, it's club music, so like it's meant to be played with a lot of people in the room and for people to vibe off of that. I think it's similar to if anyone ever has been to like a mosh pit. You know, I got mixed feelings, but I think trap music is black people's. What kind of music is it? That what's mosh music? What do you call that? Punk, rage? What is metal? Okay, so you know, trap is our metal. You know what I'm saying? A little more groove, a little more musicality, and a little more rhythmic. But we get that feeling. I feel like that revolt, that rebel in us, and it when you're with other people who feel that too. I feel like you can build off of that and it gets magnified and it gets multiplied.
I want to add to that too, because there's also something interesting to me because I'm so caught up in subversive behavior that I love seeing how in mixed spaces or predominantly white spaces, I should say, I love seeing the white discomfort around trap music, mostly because it's in relation to how that person is perceiving them, enjoying it. So there's something about being in that space and just being around that complicated energy and vibe. And I just think that's such an interesting space to play with. I mean, obviously it's still a stifling environment, but again, I'm always gonna return to the possibility that I feel like trap creates. Yes, it's club music, yes, it's for everyone, but I believe much of it is illegible to the larger population. So I feel like there's just so much, like the repertoire sort of carries in those spaces too, and I feel like that's the perfect time to play with it, like in a subversive way for me. So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, not to go all the way back to our N-word episode, but in that conversation, some of y'all may know Josh Odom. He was also featured on that episode. But I had asked, we were talking about the song Hot Nigga by Bobby Shmurda. And I asked, you know, have y'all listened to this in mixed company? And if so, like, what was that experience like? And what Josh had said was that it made him incredibly happy. And that he just like ate up every minute of it, because it's a moment in which you get to, you know, I mean, if the song is Hot Nigga, then I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna watch you. And if you do say it, all hell's gonna break loose. So it's like a test. It's like us feeling each other out to see like what are actually the politics in the room, and how am I going to navigate based on my reading of that. Anybody else have anything they want to bring up in regard to the body performing unapologetic blackness? Yeah.
I'll just talk about something I witnessed at UMass Rec Center. I was in there early in the morning, and I'm one of maybe 4 black people in there in the morning. And there were 2 gentlemen in there, they were lifting, and they were, you know, they're listening to trap music. They're saying these lyrics, and the white people were looking around like, oh my gosh, we can hear you. Like, and I just chuckled because it's like, hey, I'm here, I'm lifting in this white space. I'm letting you know that I'm here. And they looked so uncomfortable, and I was just like, I'm with this. Like, what are y'all listening to? Like, yeah, I'm with it. So, just want to mention that.
Yeah, that space is actually one of the more interesting spaces on our campus, I feel like. Yeah. I've often been the only black person in the rec center, and usually the response is like complete bafflement, like they don't know what I am or why I'm there. But like you said, I'm listening to my trap music, and as I'm running on the treadmill, I'm like, you know, having a little, you know, attack or whatever.
Splash.
But yeah, splash, exactly.
I love trapping out to Ray Sherman at the gym. It's my favorite. I only listen to trap music when I'm at the gym.
I thought that story was going to go a lot more south, to be honest with you. You know,
it was just the constant looks,
you know,
and like,
I'll take the looks over the.
yeah.
I'm actually glad you said that, because I was thinking about your question in performing performing blackness through trapness and whatnot, communally and whatnot, and I was thinking about the individual. You know, because we always think about blackness as a group, as this, not necessarily as a monolith, but as a group of people, but we're also individuals. And sometimes black individuals do not feel like they can easily or openly interact with other black folks. So in that moment, you still felt connected to them, even though you wasn't over there lifting with them. So just by hearing it, you know, so even for those folks, for black folks that just hear it in their vicinity, it's like, all right, there's something that's familial, even if I don't know who these people are or feel kind of connected to them, because, you know, all skin folk ain't kin folk. Let's keep it 100. It is what it is, you know, but you still, there's something there. So, yeah.
I want to turn that question back to you and ask, like, when you like realize they're listening to trap music, they're whatever they're doing, like, how did that affinity, if you can call it such, change like your experience of that moment in that space, or how did it influence it, if any?
It was affirming, to be certain. Like I felt like, yeah, we're here. Like, I'm just quiet. I'm listening to my music. I just want to, you know, leave, not talk to anybody. But just seeing them, and just like, I just felt the connection, like the affirmation of my blackness in that space by them performing theirs. And so it was like, we're in this shared experience together. You know, we're here. And so pretty much what it felt like.
Anybody else got questions, comments?
Sounds like a head nod.
Head nod?
You know, head nod. Across the way.
Yeah.
Keep it moving. It's a head nod.
The head nod, yeah.
Transitioning on to the next one, we are going to be looking at respectability and trap blackness. Again, respectability and trap blackness. I'm having Nasir break that down a bit more.
So part of the reason we wanted to do a segment on this is because rap gets dragged all the time by the respectable worlds, both white and black. And often what the critique, or often a critique that gets thrown at rap, is that we reproduce stereotypes that are destructive to our well-being, the community's well-being. So we wanted to actually think about something else, which is how might trap music, rap music, how does it challenge black stereotypes? How does it push back? How does it, if it's re-theorizing blackness, how does it do that? Yeah. So let me restate the question. How does hip hop challenge respectability politics in the rap community? And does it offer an alternative strategy to respectability for navigating black life under white supremacy?
Yeah, I think one, it puts a spin on it. I think about like when I came of age, and when a lot of people in here came of age, it was when Bill Cosby had made his like remarks at the 50th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And I remember being in, I'm in all black spaces, and I remember being exposed to a lot of older people who really agreed with Bill Cosby. And they 100% stood behind what he was saying. Even my mother gave me that book by Juan Williams called Enough, where he writes like 200 pages of basically supporting Bill Cosby, and my mom was giving it to me like that was the Bible. And I remember being at NAACP events, and everybody's preaching about that and talking about how you know, if we were to just pull our pants up, if we were to just stop saying nigga, if we were to just stop listening to this rap music, our whole oppression would be obsolete. You know, and that's hella problematic, you know, because it's telling us, you know, that we are the perpetrators of our own oppression. And I think, you know, what makes hip hop so great is it doesn't try, well, it attempts to dismantle these stereotypes, but it doesn't necessarily refute some of these things they're saying. Like, you know, yeah, sure, like, I mean, I think we all know black people who sell drugs, you know, and that's how they make a living. I think we all know black people who do certain things that a lot of these people would say are undesirable. And honestly, I think hip hop has done great because it puts a narrative on it. It tells these people's stories. It tells people why would people turn to these sort of things, and it gives a voice to people who necessarily didn't always have that voice. And I think it lets us see people and see, you know, we can also be successful if we don't pull our pants up. We can still be successful if we say nigga. We can still be smart. I think we haven't said it yet, but you know, let I don't know, Cardi B, you know, like, I mean, she's a complicated individual, but I think, like, you could look up Cardi B. She's bringing up some real-ish all the time pertaining to blackness, politics. I saw she was giving a talk about the UN. Like, she's talking about the UN. And, like, I think, like, for me, Cardi B is somebody in black spaces, we would have wrote her off. You know, black people would have wrote her off. Black people would have said, the way she's behaving, she'll never find a man. You know, she'll never be successful. You know, we say that to ourselves, and people have told us to us, at least for me growing up. And you know, you look at Nas. You know, Nas is, you know, he's running things at Harvard. You know, I feel like, you know, based on what we know about Nas and how Nas grew up, people would probably tell him that couldn't be a reality. You know, and I think hip hop puts a spin on a lot of these stereotypes. It says, you know, what's wrong with these stereotypes? And why are they undesirable? And who says we can't be nuanced? You know, why can't we be nuanced? You know, everyone else gets to be nuanced. You know, no one talks about the controversies of every single, like, Italian mob movie and how that reflects that, you know, we don't see Italian people and think they're all gangsters. You know, so why is it that we gotta, why do we have to take ownership over everything that hip hop does? You know, why do we have to be responsible for every single black celebrity out there? And why is it that black people all of a sudden have to take on this responsibility as well when we see so many media images that are doing the same thing that hip hop has done but doesn't have to bear that responsibility? You know? Why?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about respectability and trap blackness is actually Chance the Rapper. And he might be an odd choice. But the reason is, a lot of you are probably familiar with the song No Problem. I think he won a Grammy for that, actually. But in the song, okay, so in my opinion, Chance the Rapper has brought a whole new possibility of wholesomeness to rap. And, like, seriously, I mean, I don't know if some of you saw the meme. There was a meme going around of him and it was a picture of him and Vic Mensa, and it was like somebody had said they squashed their beef, and then the person who posted it was like they were beefing about who did more community service. And I'm like, you know, so like he's made space in rap for somebody to do that kind of thing. Yet he has his song No Problem, which is probably like one of the most popular songs off of that whole mixtape. And in the song, he's talking about going into white spaces, occupying them, shaking your dreads, and like performing a type of badness. And so for me, I'm like, with respectability, it's, despite that it often comes from well-meaning, committed black folks, it still is trying to predetermine how I'm gonna perform both my blackness and myself. And so for me, part of what trap music does is it says, you know what, I refuse the options. I refuse the very limited options that you're giving me for how to perform myself and my blackness. And so as such, I'm gonna perform it in a way that I know pisses you off and scares you, because it kind of makes a mockery. It exposes it as a sham. This idea that like we're gangsters, blah blah blah, the whole narrative. So for me, yeah, it's really a way to refuse to be told how to perform my blackness, and to refuse the idea of refusing certain kinds of blackness because of what white society, how white society has deemed them. So yeah.
Guess moving on to the next one. How does hip hop challenge respectability politics? Oh, apologies about that. How does hip hop refy the stereotypes, and what do we make of that? Basically, when rappers reproduce stereotypical images, it's done with a re-theorizing of what these images mean and what this kind of blackness means.
So yeah, you kind of answered the question. But yeah. So part of this conversation, right, is that, you know, we are reproducing images that people can interpret as stereotypical negative images. So if we're talking about respectability, we're talking about unapologetic blackness. Like, what do we make of that? Like, how do we wrap our minds around the fact that like these are stereotypes that are hurting Black people, but you know, like where do you go from that, basically?
So you're asking us specifically, how do racist stereotypes in hip hop reaffirm particular said racist stereotypes? Like, how do they promote those?
Yeah, like, so I don't know, you see somebody in a music video with an AK-47 and a bunch of money and doing whatever stereotypical thing. So in my opinion, that is not the same as a white producer, director, blah, 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 creating this character and then, you know what I'm saying? For me, I perform Black stereotypes all the time. I feed into white people's fear of me, right? White people look at me in a certain way. I know they're scared of me. I know they attribute all these meanings to either my sagging pants, my do-rag, my cornrows, whatever. But when I do it, to me, it's not the same. And I was wondering, so what do you make of that when we're contributing to these stereotypes? How is it different when it's coming from the Black person in question versus like coming from white media?
I think we should probably have to look at it the same way you would in relation to whoever the artist is, and instead of looking specifically at whatever the stereotype is that we are confronted with or that we recognize, and give it a little bit of a deeper thought. Now, there might not be no deeper thought behind it, but there might be, like you were saying, they might be trying to subvert something, some type of meaning with that. I'm thinking about the Roots. They had their song off of Illadelph Half-Life, What They Do. What they did in that music video, they took a lot of stereotypes and incorporated them into the music video. Like, one of the shots I remember in particular, there was like this girl like dancing provocatively like up in front of the camera, and all of a sudden she like gets a cramp, so she has to stop and then like walk off. So trying to like poke fun and stuff like that, but you didn't know it was supposed to be funny up until that moment. So again, they used that woman's body in that particular way to try to speak on something larger in a particular context. So yeah, I guess if you're a fan of rap, you know, if you consider yourself a fan or a scholar of rap, you might need to do that extra work. Look beyond just the surface and do a little bit of digging to see if there's something there.
I was just thinking, like, you know, the way I talk, especially to my friends, especially to my black friends, like, you know, they'll be like, what's up? And I'll be like, you know, I'm just thugging. I'm out here thugging, you know what I'm saying? And to me, that means something entirely different than it would mean in mainstream society, I guess. You know, for me, because I'm a Nas diehard OG, like, for me, when I think of what is a gangster, I think of Nas's theorizations of what is a gangster. I think of somebody who's intelligent, somebody who's, I mean, anyway, very different from the idea that mainstream society would give you about who this black gangster is. So for me, like, I refuse it by re-theorizing it and giving it a different meaning, much like the N-word, actually, but just like in different areas.
You mentioned Cardi B, and I think Cardi's a really important person to look to right now. One, for what she's offering representationally, but also for what she's referencing, right? Like, Cardi's not new, right? We've had this sort of female rapper on the scene before. It's also, like, she's very much a reproduction, not that she's not unique and not working from her own subjective experience as a rapper, but, you know, her aesthetic and her style is very much rooted in what black women created in hip hop. So for me, there was always something about the stereotypes that were useful to white supremacy, like the mammy, right? And then there was something about the stereotypes that reify the fear, right? I have no use for the mammy. The mammy's gonna kill me. I have some use for the Jezebel. I have some use for these subversive characters. So, and because they're marginalized and demonized that even more, you know, that much more, I have to look at that. So there's something about what produces the most fear, and I think there's something about that which is that respectability politics tend to want to conceal, you know, the strongest that have the most potential to me. Because at the root of hip hop for me, it is still the political work of hip hop. It is still trying to create a new world. It's still trying to say, I can take from master. I can do that too. That can be mine. And that's very problematic and complicated in itself, right? Because the masculinity of that and what that's referencing is dangerous. But it opened up this possibility to take, I think, this black figure of black women's sexuality and open up lanes for these MCs and open up these opportunities to view their sexuality as something that's generative and something that's powerful. Cardi talks a lot about using sex to exploit men. She talks a lot about using her body to threaten the patriarchy, right? And we don't think about it like that. We just think, okay, the hoe is just this sad, you know, at the, you know, she's over-determined and she's, you know, her success in her life is based on a man versus how she flipped the script and how Kim flipped the script to make it about, you know, if you're gonna exploit me and if you're gonna commodify me, I'm gonna control that. So there was something really interesting about that for me in seeing Cardi, and especially seeing her before she got her deal, because she did start as a stripper and she was very open about it. So I think there's a lot of potential. I think Cardi's opening up a lot of possibility for us to go even further and talk about black women and black hip hop performers and the relationship between that and pornography and pornographics. And I think it's an important area for us to move to, because there's something about the sexualization of the black woman's body that is integral to masculinity in hip hop. It cannot exist without one can't really exist without the other. Well, maybe, let me take that back. But the masculinity and the way it's performed cannot exist without that figure. And we know what that figure looks like. We see it reproduced all the time. So I think we're seeing something very important happening, especially for women in sex work, especially for women's sexuality, especially for feminism. If your feminism doesn't include ratchetness, like, it's not a revolution, you know? So
can I say it?
Yeah, cite it, please.
Yeah, I have a friend who goes by the handle Young Ratchet Revolutionary. She's a badass, and shout out to LT. But she always says, if your revolution is not ratchet, is it really a revolution? Which, bet. Yeah.
So, question from the live feed. What other genre or era of black music does trap seem to most evolve or rise from?
I hear jazz and trap. I hear classical and trap. To me, trap is still referencing all of the same music that we study in hip hop. I've never seen it as some leap. I don't understand what this whole discourse is around mumble rap. Like it all is a very fluid transition. Sonically, things have changed, and sonically things are exploding right now, and that's beautiful. But I still don't see this like jump from the old head to. I don't get it. I don't get the conflict. One relies on the other, So, yeah.
I'm probably about to just say what you're gonna say, so go ahead.
Wait, what would you gonna say?
All right.
You said what you was gonna say.
Well, I was gonna say we did a whole episode on the spirituality of trap music and the way that trap music, like in a lot of ways, the excess that you're talking about. I think trap music is very much about emotional excess, and I think that definitely has its roots in the sorrow songs, in the blues, and in gospel as well. What were you gonna say?
So I was going to relate trap music back to gospel, but it does. It very much. That's so weird. Oh my goodness, just thinking about that in relation to wow. Anyway, anywho, it does remind me a lot of gospel again, just because of the call and response element, that freedom that you get to kind of respond in whatever way with those ad libs. Just thinking about the conversation, that whole old head mumble rap thing that comes up, because I am a fan of, I guess, music before, hip-hop music specifically before 2005 mostly. I can see stylistically where there is a break. I don't think that it's negative. I think it's positive. I think it's amazing, because hip-hop, in my opinion, is probably the most deconstructive form of music, because of its ability to take from whatever and then build it back up into something new. Just even thinking about the use of sampling, which I'm writing on. The fact that you have folks like Ice Cube who can take a sample, just a guitar riff, and somehow turn it into something else, just being inspired by that. Hip-hop is always going to reinvent itself, reconstruct itself off of the building blocks of hip-hop music, black music in itself. So yeah, that was low-key a little bit of a tangent, but everything is connected. Yeah.
I think also this is not so much a black genre, but one of the things, I study badness, which I think about as a way of kind of flipping the script on the definitions that get placed on black bodies, and becoming the godly version of what they say I am. And so for me, like the tradition of badness in the African American context is over 150 years long. It started in the 1880s. There was a shift from the trickster tales, the trickster figures, and then through emancipation, there was a need for different kind of survival tactics than were necessary under the institution of slavery. And so in the 1880s, you have bad men characters developing, and then they've been engaged through song, through literature, through movies like blaxploitation films in the 60s, in the 70s, all the way through gangster rap music. So in terms of trap music's inheritance, not so much genre-wise, but I think the world of the trap star, the world view of trap music, is definitely rooted in badness practices that have existed in the U.S. For over 100 years.
Yeah, I don't think trap's doing anything new, in a sense. I think it's doing what black music has always done, and that's take from experiences that black people deal with, and also take from sounds that have already been produced And that's not to insult it, that's to like commend it for carrying on that black musical tradition. And I feel like you can't separate trap music, one, from other hip hop, because I feel like you hear trap music when you listen. I mean, you know, what is trap music? You know, I mean, I hear trap when I listen to SZA. I hear trap when I listen to Damn. You know, and you know, I hear trap is so, it comes and goes in it. And as a jazz musician, I see a lot of drummers take that trap sort of style, you know, syncopation with the cymbal and snare. And it makes me wonder, like, are they taking it from trap, or is trap taking it from them? And who came first, the chicken or the egg? Because I think a lot of those things weren't new, you know? And so I think trap just takes from black music. Like, you know, we hear the classical, we hear the funk, we hear the jazz, we hear the soul, we hear the, you know, the rock. You know, we hear it all, and I don't think you can like label and put trap music in a box. You know, I think subgenres genres in general can get real problematic and real sticky because they're the products of, you know, I'll say white people colonizing music, especially black music. R&B was created because they needed to create a difference between pop music and white music and black music. That's why R&B was created. They couldn't actually figure out a sonic difference. They were just like, well, black people make this music, white people make that. So we're gonna create a different category, you know, urban music. You know, what's the difference? You know, they try to make difference between rap and hip hop and all this different stuff. And like, it gets to a point where we're like, we don't even know what these genres are. And I think like trap music, for the sake, like we know what trap music is, but at the same time, like you can't just put it in a box and say, this is what trap music is, or this is what it isn't, or this is what trap music does, or this is what trap music doesn't, because they've done that with enough black music already. And it can be counterproductive and also detrimental to the art form forever pushing it forward. Because we see that in jazz, we see that in rock and R&B, and I think we just gotta let hip hop be, let it do what it do, and let it take from what it takes from, and let it just be.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm so hesitant to talk about or try to define what trap is, because we don't know yet. Just like people did not know what rhythm and blues was until it passed. Because even though we've gone, like, just off of what you were saying, rhythm and blues, there are distinct qualities that go into that, but we don't remember them. The same thing with people interchanging terms like hip hop and rap. Rapping is a technique, a way to sing, I guess. Hip hop is a culture. You know what I mean? That's a subculture with elements that are attached to it. So in relation to like rhythm and blues, you had the incorporation of singers that were what you would call shouters. You know what I mean? And that's what created the rhythm and blues. And so with that, maybe in some time, if we look back on trap, we might be able to say, okay, so it was these things that were added specifically. But it's really, I feel like it's going to be really hard for us to like objectively look at this music that is still happening. It's still like breathing and whatnot. It's not like other genres that kind of go through lulls and whatnot. This is still happening. It's still alive and whatnot. So, you know, respect the art, let it breathe and whatnot. That's my feel on it. Let it do its thing. Cook, be black and beautiful.
I want to respond to what I hear both of you saying, and especially talking about, like, you know, what is trap. It's new still, and we don't know what necessarily defines it yet, but that's part of what it makes it so exciting to me, is the dynamism, is the fact that every like 5 years it sounds completely different, and I think that's one of my requirements for being a rap god, is that rappers have to push the expectations. You have to meet the expectations in terms of skill and technique, but then you have to push the expectations. You have to push the boundaries into something new. Like, you know, that's why rap has always been youth culture. Like, rap is about the new thing. It's always about the new thing. And yesterday's song is 2 years ago, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, for me, like, part of like the difficulty in categorizing it is that it's new, but that it's ever changing, it's ever evolving, and like it's hard to even keep up with, to be honest. Yeah.
As the resident old school head, I wanted to relay a little bit of some of the conversations I have with the other Kango Puma wearing cats, like myself. Interestingly enough, I think a lot of the sort of what you don't understand about as you're relaying the idea of what the difference is, I also sometimes go, what's the difference? As you all are relaying some of the experiences, I wrote notes that this is the exact same thing, hearing the exact same critiques from older heads at the time when I was looking for cardboard to break them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is this? Oh, this is that. It's just, oh, blah, blah. It's the same thing reproduced. A lot of it has to do with commodification and ownership, and who gets to determine what authentic is.
Right.
Right? And then there's also aesthetic differences. Like, I've got a 13-year-old at home, and I say all the time, I'm like, what are you listening to? He's like, you're not going to like it. I'm like, well, let me listen to it. You never know. And so I'll listen to what he's listening to, and I'm like, I feel the vibe on that. You know, I mean, not that I don't feel the vibe, but I feel why you're vibing to it, right? I can relate to that. And the difference for me has always come, it's aesthetic. I'm a boom bap head, right? And so when you break it down technically, I'm looking for boom bap. And the technology has changed. And always in music, the technology changes. Think about the first time most jazz heads heard Rocket, right? They hated it. What is all of this electronic, blah, blah, blah? That's not, and we're talking about one of the greatest pianists of all time. And people were killing it. Now the young heads, we were like, oh, word, because he was incorporating new sounds, new sonic adventures into it, And so there's a lot of it that comes down to aesthetics, but everything that I've heard about the performativity and how you maneuver. I mean, thinking about when I went to college and how a hood meant something, headphones meant something, my baggy jeans meant something, people stayed the F away from me. And I needed that. When I needed that, I could put on that cape and they would part. I didn't have to maneuver the sidewalk. They were getting out my way. You know what I mean? So a lot of those same things exist. There's no real difference in that. It's just what it looks like, right? What is the performance? And how does it, I've learned so much today just listening to the connections to everything, because aesthetically I'm like, that's cool. I can only get through a couple minutes, because the other thing too is that I can't listen to any club music all day long. You know what I mean? I can't at the gym, I can't, wherever, but, or if I'm at the club, but a lot of it comes down to, instead of the sort of divisions, about trying to understand, the context and where it's coming from. And that was a big thing for me, is thinking about how is this cultural production happening in context. Because I can tell you straight up, in 1988, the exact same conversations people were having about mumble rappers, we were hearing from everybody else saying the same thing to us. History keeps continuing to repeat itself if we don't call attention to it, right, and understand. And a lot of the old heads are feeling like, damn, that crazy rant that Q-Tip went on, right? He went on a rant about how this music that he loves and this tribute to his friend, his fallen friend, went unnoticed in the Grammys. Interestingly enough, because we all used to be like, we know that that's not for us, but now, 20 years later, we're like, how come we're not there? It's a weird thing, but part of it is, as the technology has changed, as the things that people listen to, as the sort of quickness with technology on new music is coming out, that's changed. You got to put out a new single tomorrow or today. If not, you're forgotten. And so there's a lot of these things that have to do with the technology change and everything else. And I think something like trap music, because it's so electronic in and of itself, and because the sonic nature of it gets dispersed in a different way, things change so quickly, and that's hard for some folks who may not necessarily be as technologically as involved as they used to. So, but it's the same story, and it's really good to hear the same. Well, in some senses, it's tough to hear the same struggles being reproduced, but they're being reproduced in different ways, and the way in which we are fighting back against that have adapted and changed, and it's still coming from the same root. The political context of hip hop, trap music, whatever, it's still the same root. It's still connected to the same things that you're talking about, going back all the way to the Batman and even beyond. So it's just great to hear this.
Yeah, I just wanted to add quickly to that, the archive is always working. It's always doing this sort of work. And it's sort of arrogant to think that, trap came out of nowhere. No, of course it's in the tradition, of course it's a new technology. It's the new technology building from the old. That's how archives work, that's how as humans we archive and work and make more material. So and there's something valuable for me personally to view it that way, that I don't have to necessarily be comparing, but that I can more so just see the connections. When you start seeing the connections, it's much more interesting than being overly critical. So
I think as a follow-up question, just to tie in Tamar and what you said, I think when you spoke about being with your 13-year-old child and just being able to vibe, you could understand his vibe. I think, does that speak towards shared experience of resistance? Like hip hop embodies the same recurrent themes of resistance. I don't know if you could speak a bit more on that.
Well, I mean, I think about that age, 13 in middle school, right? And so having to navigate all the respectability stuff that's been put on him, right? He needs to be and look like a specific kind of way in this valley, in this place, being a young black man and having to navigate those things and the expectations of what it is, and to have that moment to put those beats on and be like, hopefully he's not dropping the F-bomb every other moment, which would be good, which is good, right? But at the same time, not policing the fact that he's listening to something that is very resistant. And, in that type of protective and aggressive, like you said, right? I think that there's that in and of itself is a relatable moment, and then to get to share, to be like, for me, it's the aesthetics piece to it. Is like I am like you. I'm looking for 16s. I want to hear some bars. I want to hear some wordplay. I want to hear some, I want to hear all of those kinds of things because I like that kind of complexity. And then to be like, oh, what about this? Try, and then we're having an exchange back and forth. And now all of a sudden it's a conversation.
Definitely. I think just tying on to that, opening up this question to the entire audience. Again, on the theme of resistance and memory and history, does the audience feel or resonate with, just give me a second, that just popped out of my head. Yeah, it's back. I'm trying to find a way to word this in a way that's... Somebody quoted that hip-hop is reflective of people, of black people, of community. And so I'm curious to know what the audience thinks to challenge that. Is hip-hop going to change if the people change? Meaning, does black people need healing? Or vice versa? Does hip-hop need healing? Do we need to look at the mainstream outlets? Do we need to look at the people that are putting out this music and start to target them so that we can get more political voices to people like Mos Def and underground rappers that are putting out more conscious, understandings of what we're going through, or vice versa? I think we have a response in the back.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I felt like trap music was always a reflection of the inner city, and I think its roots in drug dealing and like street gangs, that was an act of resistance in itself. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's very much reflective of the space that it's created in. But just like mainstream rap, I think that once the main record labels got a hold of it, it became something different than what it was when I was growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Definitely. That actually ties on to what you just spoke about with the rise of technology. We're looking at which subculture is able to take advantage of it first to profit off of this culture, of black culture. So just wanted to open that up to the panel too, to speak on that.
Also, real quick, to address what you said, Chap, I totally feel that, and I think that's a really important point, like, that the tie between, like, street life and rap music, especially trap music, which is centered around the trap star, right? Or the trap boy, trap girl now, thank God for Cardi. But one of the things that makes me, what you said about drug dealing and street life immediately made me think of like the garrison communities in Jamaica. And basically, for those who don't know, the garrison, they're usually run by a drug don, but they take the I don't know if you want to call it a gang, whatever, the formulation of people, the group takes on a lot of the state functions, provides a lot of the resources that the state otherwise wouldn't be providing to people. And so just in responding to what you said, you know, the garrison communities have roots in maroonage. You know, these are deep histories of Black people saying, you know what, I am going to refuse to even participate in your society. I'm going to refuse to participate in your ways of life. I'm going to make my own how I see fit, and I'm going to take care of mine. So yeah, I think that really resonates with me. And I think there's a long history that goes back even before hip hop, of Black people saying, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna do it my way. And yeah. Yeah.
Quickly, I also think there's a lack of imagination when it comes to the performance of rap. I don't know who the rapper was recently, but he was talking about how his son might make similar lyrics to him, but he's really not about that life, right? So this idea that just because I'm saying it no different than an actor is acting it means that I'm actually partaking in it, right? And letting that be a part of the narrative, that sometimes we're acting and it's not actually that we're doing it. And even if we are doing it, that being a part of no different than it exists everywhere in the world, that just being a part of the narrative. So I don't want to expect conscious rap from everyone, and when I need conscious rap, I listen to conscious rap, and not a lot of it is fictitious. That's all.
A lot of conscious rap is fictitious too.
Yeah.
So we need to bite down. I think it's time to also like deconstruct the whole conscious rap idea. Just like trap, I don't even know what that means. I mean, I know what trap means, actually. I think I have more concrete feelings and associations with trap because, like our friend said, I center the trap. I center the center of refusal and the center of subversion, you know, and the violence, right? And the by any means necessariness of it. But conscious rap for me is, in many ways, another level of the respectability that I want to do away with in rap. I've listened to a lot of rap that would not be labeled conscious, that to me was very conscious, and woke up my consciousness. I think we need to be careful because conscious rap has also been very present in facilitating ways of policing Black women, and you know, like the whole idea of conscious rap and like the generation that came into that was very aestheticized. You know, it was a look. And it was a diet. And it was an Afrocentric, you know, centrism that was also very classist in itself. Like it was, to me, conscious rap comes from privilege. So yeah, you know, I find a lot of consciousness in what Young Thug is saying too, as much as I found a lot of consciousness in what Mos Def was doing. They're very similar in real life. So if we really want to dive into their personas. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Because I'm itching. I'm gonna drop the bomb here. I don't actually think there is such a thing as conscious rap. I think that's something that people created to somehow, sorry, I feel myself getting intense. I feel like that is something very much constructed. Once hip hop became more acceptable, people decided that these were particular artists that we consider conscious. They're speaking about things that are different than what we considered mainstream to be focused on. And the only reason why I feel bad is because even though they're a little bit older now and they low-key fell into the Hotep kingdom, but you know, folks like Common and Mos Def, thinking about where they come from, we unfortunately they've been placed in that, but they come from poverty as well. Common's from Chicago, Mos Def is from Brooklyn. You know, these are not black people that are sitting up in wealth and whatnot and then just saying, look at you black people down here, like Jay-Z did with that thing and whatnot. Not like that. So in relation to that, again, that's why I say we have to be very, very conscious of, no pun intended, we have to be very conscious about the way we look at this music that's being created right now, but also the way that we look at those expressions back then. Because remember, Common, Mos Def, Tribe Called Quest, Native Tongues, that posse, like they were youths as well when that came out. So again, they were not necessarily speaking from, some of them were, you know, shout out to Lauryn Hill. Some of them were speaking from particular bourgeois perspectives, but I just think that it's really important to remember that most popular black music begins, I was telling my roommate, begins among the proletariat, begins among the poor people, you know, and those you have those outliers, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, as well as there's a market for conscious rap. You know, and I've always felt this way, because I think, like, you know, what is conscious hip-hop? One, because it creates a dichotomy. It says who has the right to speak on certain matters, which is incredibly problematic, classist, you know, ego-driven, because also a lot of these folks who are quote-unquote conscious rappers are super problematic, you know. I love Quali, but Quali's a troll. You know, Common, Mos, all those cats, you know, and right now, especially because, what's the phrase? You know, I'm gonna say the popularization, or the, you know, it. Right now, our oppression is attractive right now. It looks good. It's cool. You know what I mean? It's cool to say Black Lives Matter, but let's be real. A lot of, like when Mike Brown first died, a lot of white folks were with it. You know, like I think we've all heard things that supported white supremacy, but now everybody wants to jump on the wagon of Black Lives Matter and say these sort of things. So now there's a market for that. There's another niche. The same way there was a niche in the early 90s and mid 90s. There's a niche again for having protest music, whatever that means. And so you see people who are trying to co-opt the movement, and see people who are making albums that are, you know, from start to finish conscious or protest or trying to do that, and they're commodifying people's oppression. I think being black, whether you want it to be or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, is always going to be political. You know what I'm saying? Migos are just as political as Kendrick Lamar's Damn, whether you want to admit it or not, whether or not it fits your comfort zone of what that means to be black or what it doesn't mean to be black. But our existence is the existence of politics, of policies, of oppression, of violence, of all these different things. And so why can't, you know, Migos be conscious rap? Why can't Cardi B be conscious rap? Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's all relative.
Just really short, the question of black communities healing, or the need to heal. They've been healing, they are healing, it never stopped. It was always, I mean, the care and concern for communities and for families and the structures that were put in place to ensure that they happen were always there. I get frustrated when people, and this is the danger of language, associate trap with, you know, this image of like, there's this idea that poverty does not contain also the elements of like care and concern, that people aren't caring and attempting healing and healing. So there's too much overlooked subjectivity. And I think we need to spend more time looking at the lives of the people who generate this beautiful culture before we come to critique, because we don't know black people yet. So, and many black people don't know the black people they're critiquing.
I also think it's interesting when black people specifically are looked at in relation to their music, for it to somehow change these bigger aspects about the community, Black people. It's like, oh, well, this music, how can we fix it to heal? How can we fix it to be political? How can we fix it to be this? And I always wonder is like, do folks ask these questions about white music? Are we looking for white music to fix the white community? Why are our art expressions somehow, why do they always have to be police and bastardized to somehow fit something else, as opposed to looking at these art forms and saying, okay, this makes me uncomfortable, or this somehow seems wrong. So maybe we should somehow evaluate what is going on, as opposed to saying, well, no, this is bad, so we have to change how your music is created. I think that is probably the scariest and one of the more insidious components of white supremacy in relation to our art forms and our cultural productions. Yeah.
Woo! All right, we out of time already. I'm just gonna end on that. So we've been trying to figure out, like we said, how to make this a conversation, how to make it a two-way street, and finding new ways to always ever be doing that. So we, right now, an idea that we had is that we have a post on our Instagram page. It's the most recent post. It just says Trap Society. And so I know a lot of times if I go to a talk or a panel or an event, I won't think about what I wanted to say till later. So if that's the case for you, we welcome you to share any thoughts or questions or disagreements or ideas you have from tonight on our Instagram. If you decide to, we'd love to specifically know, like, in terms of trap music, the new wave in hip hop. Like, are you with it? Are you not with it? How do you feel about it? How would you characterize it? What do you think it means, if anything, or is it meaningless? Like, where do you stand with current rap? And are you with it? If so, why? If not, why not? So again, I want to thank the department for their sponsorship and the panelists for coming through with the wisdom and great questions from everyone. So thank you guys so much for coming. We will be doing this once a month, the first Friday of every month, except January, since the college is closed. So we will have another one February 2nd. So we'd love to see y'all again. Thank you for coming. Check.